Good evening, and thank you for joining this late edition of Healthy Heart Nation Heart to Heart Conversations, where we're advocating on behalf of women's health. We're taking it from adolescents to young women, as well as going into an older woman, and then just in terms of how women, and especially Black women, are perceived in health as a whole. So we thank you so much for joining us. This is actually our part 2. So if you've missed the adolescent health, please go to our YouTube channel at Healthy Heart Nation to get a chance to look at that one. But today we're going to be focusing on youth. Being a young woman in this world is hard. It's my observation that the difficulties is in large part a result of the messaging and lack of certain messages. We send young girls and their bodies, young girls, medium-sized girls, all girls, about their bodies. And more specifically, there's a huge deficit in the number of young women actively advocating for their health. Women already have a raw deal when it comes to healthcare. Studies have shown that doctors across the board have a tendency not to take women's pain seriously, undertreat them when they do mention symptoms, and take longer period of time to actually give them medications. Coupled with the woman's age, and it's no wonder that many young women and girls not only don't get the help they need, but grow up thinking that they don't deserve it in the first place. Well, today we're going to change that, and at least we're going to do it through some discussions. I am joined by my co-host today, and her name is Brooke Batiste. And so, Brooke, thank you for joining me. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
My name is Brooke Batiste. I'm a junior in high school at Santiago. I help my parents with their Healthy Heart Nation, and that's pretty much it. Oh, I'm vice president at the BSU at my school.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me, Brooke. I appreciate it. And so this evening we are joined by our panelists. We have Dr. Anissa LeCount and we have Dr. Nalo Hamilton. And so we're just going to have some conversations around things that might be on the mind of someone Brooke's age. So with that, we'll have Nalo. Can you just introduce us and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Good evening. Glad I could be here. Brooke, I am a scientist. I do breast cancer research. I also teach students. I like that, so I actually have a lab. I'm also a women's health and adult nurse practitioner. So I deal with patients also in the clinical area, answering those questions, advocating for them, and making sure they have the best outcomes possible.
Yes, and Nalo, I will like to add that all of this session is your idea. This was your brainchild. She said that we really need to focus on women's health this month in May. And so that's why we have these 4-part sessions. So thank you, Nalo, for that. Okay.
Thank you for indulging me.
And Dr. LeCount, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Anissa LeCount. I am a family medicine physician. And what that entails is I see pediatrics, women, and patients of all ages and genders. I am also in academic medicine, so I teach medical students as well. So it is my pleasure to be here and to be of service.
Fantastic, guys. Thank you so much. Okay, Brooke, we'll turn it over to you and you can start with your questions.
Okay. I wanted to start off the conversation by asking about mental health, because that's a big thing, especially for students who are like me in their junior year of high school, which is extremely stressful when they're knowing that they're going into their senior year and having to apply for colleges and have to deal with like the rejection and all the other things that come with that. So I was wondering what you guys' stances are on mental health days.
So I'll start. So mental health days or mental health in general. So I'll start with mental health in general. I think it's very important to identify um, that you're having an issue. I think sometimes we're going through things and we don't even know that that's what it's termed. Like, mental health is such a broad umbrella. But if you feel like you are more irritated, lack of sleep, unfocused, and just there's something called dysthymia. And what that means is that, I'm functional. I can get through everything, but I'm sad. And I'm just not enjoying things that I enjoyed before. Those are some of the first signs of having just symptoms of mental health issues, and they're mild. And so they usually start very mild before they start to spiral. But I think it's very important for you to identify and kind of know yourself and then reach out. There's a huge stigma when it comes to, taking medications or even being diagnosed with anxiety, depression, panic attacks, whatever it may be. But I think if you just start with, this is how I feel sad, and figure out ways and reach out to those of us who are able to help you and can identify resources for you. Like if you're sad, let's talk about why you're sad and let's get you the help to help you not be sad anymore. And lots of times there's a lot of different variables that comes with that. But I think first of all, understanding that it's okay, that many of us as adults deal with that as well, that there is no stigma behind it. I remember just realizing when I was growing up that I was very nosy and very observant since a child. So I could look at people and say, oh, something's wrong over there. But it was never addressed, right? That was just, auntie so-and-so who stayed up in the room, or uncle so-and-so who sat on the porch and didn't say anything. It wasn't really addressed. So I think the fact that you have identified it at your age and are asking about it, those are the first steps. And so I'll stop there and let my colleague, chime in as well.
I love mental health days. I think that through your schedule, you need to plan a time of respite where you don't do your work. You don't do anything that has to deal with your extracurricular activities. Maybe you go away. I go up to the beach. And I will stay away. You do things that you enjoy. For me, it's going to the beach, going to get some ice cream that I particularly like with no one else. And I do it because I don't want anybody else tugging on my time. This is time for me to recharge. Sometimes it may be that you and some friends go hiking or you go camping for a while and you stay away for that amount of time. Sometimes I recommend to my students, where in your schedule do you have a break? And so when you're studying, I find this students feel that they always there's always something to do. Well, that is true. Life always has something to do. But when you have those breaks, that day off, because it happens to be a teacher's work day, or it's a holiday, or it's actually break, Christmas break, summer break, spring break, you actually break. Try not to fill that time with activities that you could do at a different time. Try not to be so busy. Sometimes you just need to be still. And that can be challenging. I do encourage people, especially some of my students who just feel like they have to be moving all the time. I asked them, I said, can you just sit in one space for 5 minutes? Don't move, don't touch, don't turn on anything, don't reach for the phone. And as you do that, you learn that you can actually be still and with yourself, and understand that you actually do like hearing yourself breathe. But I do think that it's kind of challenging to do those things with so many things grabbing your attention. And as you say, as a junior in high school, you're looking at my junior year, senior, I have things to prepare for. I might start going to look at colleges right now. What are the tests that I'm supposed to look at? but it's important for you to come away, because otherwise it's easier to get overwhelmed
Mhm.
and not be able to put things in their place. The other thing I think you should be able to do is learn to set your boundaries. Sometimes your friends are like, well, let's go this, and you really do need to go to bed. Say no. You're not gonna, you might not get to this event, but you'll be better prepared and present for yourself and your friends the next day or the next activity. Because rest is something, not only is it just physically going to sleep, but also stepping away from all the activities that are going on. And so I think that's important. And as Dr. LeCount has mentioned, when you start feeling overwhelmed, you've taken the pause, you've made time in your calendar for just you, and you're still feeling overwhelmed, then you need to talk to someone.
Mhm.
Someone needs to be there, an adult that you trust. And we might not have the answers. We might have to direct you someplace else. You may need to have a therapist.
Mhm.
And that's important as well. I do actually tell my students that anytime you go through a major change, you need a therapy session. I call it a tune-up.
Mhm.
So when you go from high school to college, I recommend that my students see a therapist, because there's different expectations between being a high school senior, where you were the it class, you knew what you were doing, you knew who all the teachers were, you were student body president, or you were an athlete, versus going to college where you may be on the team, but you're not the first string anymore. So
Mhm.
those are some of the adjustments and things like that, to be in tune with what you need for that. Because again, you're going into an environment that you're not necessarily familiar with. And so that's important to talk certain things through, because most of the time you have really good coping skills. They just may not have had to be exercised as much, because as a junior, as a senior, you're at the top of your class of, or the social scene in your high school, versus when you're about to go to college and do something different. So it's important to always be in tune when you're making those changes.
So overall, I'm just going to add overall understanding what mental health is, understanding, how to put that in your calendar and value it and value what that gives to you, as well as identifying for yourself when you may need to reach out. So I think those would be the three things that we're trying, in a nutshell, what we're trying to say when it comes to mental health days, and just identifying the fact that you actually need one. Like, how do I know I need a mental health day? Have I spiraled all the way down and then I think I need a mental health day? Like, what does that all that mean? So Dr. Hamilton stepped you through that quite nicely, Brooke. So thanks for that question. That's a great one. And as adults, we need to learn how to do that, because lots of times you look at what we do and you follow. So we need to, kind of listen to what we're telling you.
Yeah. And also, when we were growing up, right, we had to fake sick to get a day off from school, right? You had to so you would call those like a sick day, like, oh, I have a stomach hurt, or, I don't feel good, or whatever the case may be. But at this point in time, the kids are just really busy, and they're just like constantly being pulled in so many directions. And so, for me, I'm Brooke's mom, in case anybody didn't know, but, and so like a lot of times she really does push herself to go to school. She will go to school, but, sometimes you do just need to what, I just need a day just to get myself together. I'll make up the work. But, a lot of times it is necessary. Okay, Brooke, next question.
Okay. What are some ways that you guys would suggest to avoid and beat procrastination? Because a lot of people, like me, I'm great at procrastinating, but I know a lot of my friends, they have procrastination problems as well. And I was just wondering what ways you guys know that people should avoid it.
Well, I don't have a magic answer for that, Brooke. If I had a magic answer for that, I probably would be doing what I would do. And I've had everybody come into my class and take my workshop to stop procrastinating. I think I'll just start out by saying I think organization and learning how to prioritize is very important. And doing a little bit every day, right? So if you do a little bit along the way, the job doesn't seem so heavy at the end.
Yeah.
And also looking at reasons why. Like, why do I procrastinate? Is it because I feel like it's too hard? Is it that I don't want to put the work in? am I being a little lazy today? Am I tired? Am I overtaxed? And so I'm too overwhelmed because it's so much to do, I just shut down. So I think you kind of have to identify reasons why you procrastinate. So if I'm talking to you, Brooke, I would ask you, what kinds of things do you procrastinate on? Like, what do you think are some of the reasons why you do it? And is it the fact that you can get it done at the end and still do well? If you didn't do well at the end, would you procrastinate each time? Like, what do you think?
Brooke, she was asking you a question. I don't know if you can hear.
Oh, okay. I think my camera's glitching a little bit. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you. It's a little delayed, but we can hear you.
Okay, yeah. I think I might have missed it.
Oh, that's okay. Well, I think some of the questions that she was asking though aren't hers. She did like pull a group of people. So, okay, Dr. Hamilton, did you want to address the procrastination question?
Well, I think it's important, as Dr. LeCount said, identify why you procrastinate.
Mhm.
You may not even like the task. So in that case, exercising a very powerful sentence called no. Knowing when you need to say, I can't do that. I'm not available. Thank you for thinking of me. But at this time, I am committed. And I had to do something that she also mentioned as well. I used to operate on checklists because I thought it made me,
Efficient.
I could check it off the list. I was efficient. But I
Mhm.
had to learn that it wasn't necessarily getting me towards my goal. So I recommend, as is Dr. LeCount, to do something little by little. Do something on a project every single day. So you have a project that's due at a particular time, then you back it out and you say it's supposed to be due in 2 weeks, then that means I need to give 45 minutes of it every day or 30 minutes every day
Mhm.
to this project rather than waiting to the last minute. I do acknowledge that there are some people who love the adrenaline of procrastination.
Mm.
So you get up to the deadline, you have 3 days and you turn it out. I had a college friend who was like that and loved it, and they excelled in it. There wasn't pressure, then they didn't feel that they needed to focus. I'm not like that.
Mhm.
So it's knowing what you're doing. And sometimes you procrastinate for very good reasons. Certain groups call it resistance. And you have to feel why that resistance bodyguard, if you will, what's it trying to either protect you from or make you aware of. And so that's important as well, because sometimes you procrastinate because Dr. LeCount said you're overwhelmed. You just don't have it. So it depends on why you are procrastinating. And I think that's a very good question to start out with.
Fantastic. Okay, Brooke, are you ready for your next question?
Yes.
Okay.
The next question is shifting somewhat away from mental health, I guess, in a sense. But another question that I pulled from people was asking, like, what is body dysmorphia? Because we see a lot of that in social media and people saying, oh, you have to not have it or whatever, like, oh, it is what it is. So, I mean, I feel like a general, like, description of what it is, and maybe that'll help people, like, understand if they have it or not.
Okay.
So body dysmorphia syndrome is when, if I look at myself, I see something, but it's not truly how I'm perceived, but it's my perception, it's my lens. And so if um, if I feel like I'm too large, or my hands are too large, I'm like, oh, my hands are really large. And everybody sees my hands, they're like, Dr. Khan, your hands are normal. Like, nope, my hands are huge. Like, I don't do things, and it prevents me from doing things. And so body dysmorphia syndrome is a true, real diagnosis and has a lot to do with self-esteem and has a lot to do with how you have been viewed, how you felt valued in the past. It's often associated with bullying as well. Like if you've had those type of experiences in the past. And that is actually something that is really hard to get over. Adults have it as well. Excuse me. So I'm thinking that that would be something that I would actually reach out to a health professional for, because that's something somebody's going to have to work with you on. And over time, you develop ways to be able to get over that. That's not just like, oh, just, make a list, tell yourself that you don't look like that. Like that's actually, it's almost like an eating disorder. So people who have, anorexia and bulimia, um, what they're viewing in the mirror really promulgates their actions and the reasons why they may or may not eat or binge eat and then throw up and all those types of things. And so that's actually something that as a professional needs to work with you over time, and you can overcome it. It's not impossible, but it's a little bit more difficult to do on your own. But it's about having self-worth and valuing yourself and understanding that you're important, and that helping you change your lens. And when you change your lens, meaning how you view yourself, you have to do it over and over again. It's like a habit. Like you have to talk to yourself. You have to give yourself positive affirmation. You have to work on it every day. And so it's almost like what we talked about as far as procrastination, doing a little bit every day, that it's the same line. Like you have to pour into yourself or have somebody pour into yourself every day to help you overcome that, because that's the external. And I really do. I know we talked about this on the video that we did for our young women, but social media plays a huge part in that. And I know that everybody has the best light, the best filters, coming from the side, the camera's up this way, the camera's no, everybody moves that way. So look, I mean, it's crazy the way that this has really shaped our future generations in thinking that they have no value in their uniqueness, right? So, I think that we need to pull away from that a little bit. It's easier said than done because it's surrounded, it's how we communicate. But I really do think that has a huge impact on the way that we view ourselves as young women, as children, and as older women as well.
Yeah. Dr. Hamilton, did you want to add anything to that?
No, actually, Dr. LeCount was very comprehensive. I mean,
okay. Next question, Brooke.
The next question was how important is maintaining a healthy sleep schedule?
Must. I'm going to say that it's a must. And I know I wade into territory with people who say, but I can function on 5 hours of sleep. Not asking for function. I'm asking, what is your optimal? There are some people whose optimal may be 4 hours of sleep. There are some people whose optimal may be 7. Some are actually 8. And what I learned from a colleague is that it's important for you to find out what your optimal sleep time is and back your day out for that. So if you sleep best between the hours of 10 and 6, then you need to be in bed by 10. If you sleep best from the hours of 7 and 2, then you need to be in bed at 7, because you get the most work done. You have the most productivity. The other thing is when you have good sleep, fulfilling rest, you're less anxious, you're more focused, less anxiety. And for some of us, we don't reach for things we shouldn't be eating in the first place. So I can always tell when I'm off, because my diet of when I am functioning is Snickers and Dr. Pepper, period, hands down. I don't drink anything else. Oh yeah, I might throw in some water every now and then. I don't need Starbucks. I don't need salt or anything. When I realize that I'm reaching for Snickers and Dr. Pepper, and I'll keep going, then I know that I'm not rested.
Okay.
Because that's the way I've learned. I learned years ago that I'm a morning person. And so that's why I tell people to start paying attention to where they fall. Yes, I can function late at night. Part of my job requires me to do that. But is it the best time? For me, I am more active in the morning, most focused in the morning. And even when I was in high school, I would go to bed after we got out of whatever extracurricular activity, and I could wake up at 3:00 in the morning. Between 3 and 4, I could get up and do my work. Might catch another power nap about 7, which is when we were driving to school. And then after that, I was fine. Whereas I have other siblings, they worked best. They did their best work 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. That just wasn't me. And so that's why when you're saying rest, how much you got to find out what your sweet spot is for that rest, and then back your day out if you possibly can.
The only thing I'll add is that the studies have shown that cortisol levels, which are very much equated with stress, are higher when you don't get enough rest. Also, you gain weight when you don't get enough rest. And so you need to make sure that you're putting your brain to rest so it can rejuvenate and so you can be much more functional the next day. Now, the hours of that, as Dr. Hamilton said, could be whatever hours are best for you, but it is very important for your health in the long run to be able to make sure that you're getting the appropriate sleep so your body can function properly in the next day.
Okay, fantastic. All right, Brooke, got another question?
Yes. The next questions were ways to deal with stress without like being destructive to like the other things going on in your life.
Dr.
Again.
LeCount, I'm gonna let you start.
I was like, again, if I had to answer all these questions, I would be financing some things. Okay, so how do you deal with stress? Let me make sure I understood the question, Brooke, because I think I answered the first one wrong. How do we deal with stress when what? I'm sorry.
Just to keep you from being destructive.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Okay.
So it's actually finding habits. Exercise is a great way to do it. Reading is a great way to do it. It's actually pulling back from social media, and finding a hobby. Is it writing music? Is it playing music? Is it singing? Is it community service? Is it, I found that if you give to others, you often are not really focused on you and the stress kind of dissipates, but that's with parameters because you can overtask yourself, right? But finding what brings you joy. So if that's outside, if that's painting, those types of things, then I really do think that helps with stress. Dr. Hamilton?
Yes, finding the things that bring you joy also replenish you. So replenishing sometimes is simply doing something nice for somebody else. It can actually be, hey, I want to go out and plant some flowers or pull some weeds or help somebody wash the dog. That might also be something. But it's also important for you to identify what are your destructive habits. And those things, when you realize what are your destructive habits, you can take a time to sit back and think and say, why do I do them? What's my trigger? Sometimes we do them because we're stressed and we don't realize that we're stressed. When Dr. LeCount talked about cortisol levels, I have to remember that when it will dawn on me later on, I'm eating a Snickers and drinking Dr. Pepper. I've been doing this for 2 days straight. That's a destructive habit. Do I cope? Absolutely. But over long periods of time, it's not very healthy for me. I don't sleep, cortisol goes up, weight goes on. Then I look at myself and I'm like, not really happy about that. And then you start getting anxious, the anxiety goes up, then you can become obsessive, you're overly critical to yourself. So it starts those types of things. So it's a way of coming back. So if we identify what is that destructive habit that I'm doing, why am I doing it? And what could I put in to replace it? Meaning I'm doing one, sometimes you realize that your destructive habit may be that you speak unkindly about yourself or about others. So once you figure that out, you're like, okay, I said something, case in point, people say it often, that was just so dumb of me. I'm so dumb. Really? So when you start making those comments, say, okay, what am I overwhelmed about? And then what can I put in that place? You know what? No, that wasn't the smartest thing for you to do. Maybe you need to think about taking a break. How about walk away for 5 minutes, come back, try it again. You have opportunity. So you're almost in a sense giving yourself self-talk as well. Because when you identify those habits, whatever they may be, sometimes it is stomping around. Sometimes it can be talking to yourself unkindly, others unkindly, yelling, screaming, hollering. As we as parents will say, they're having a tantrum again. But figuring out what it is and then how you can change that to do something more productive. Maybe it is taking deep breaths for a minute. The Apple Watch likes to tell you to have some mindfulness time. Sometimes it's just leaving the space and then coming back to see what you could do differently. Sometimes it might mean that you do turn your phone on do not disturb or actually walk away from your phone and just have that time away. But I think that one of those things is to identify what is that destructive habit, why, and what can we put in its place. And it takes time, really, to practice.
Dr. Hamilton, I'm gonna interrupt and say I think one of the most important things you said is triggers, right? So identify what your triggers are, and if you do find out what your trigger is and you do have destructive behavior, what is it that you're trying to numb, right? What is it that you're trying to cover up? Because under destructive behavior is hurt, right? And pain. So what is it that you're trying to get to? What is it that you're trying to numb? And so that again is when you reach out to those that you love and those that you trust, so we can actually identify ways to help you. Because it's just like if you were smoking, right? If I go out and I'm like, ooh, I like to smoke, and then you're around a whole bunch of people who like to smoke, but maybe I'm smoking because I'm anxious, right? And it calms me down. Well, what's my anxiety from? My anxiety is from maybe I'm not doing well at school, or maybe I'm not doing well, at home, or there's something going at home. So it's really addressing that underlying trigger or that underlying issue that will help you with the destructive behavior. Because lots of times we're not just destructive because I'm getting up to be destructive today. You're destructive because you're actually trying to deal with something in your own way. And all of us don't choose the right paths to be able to cope. So I just want to make sure that we bring forth that if you feel like you're doing that and you can identify you're destructive, which people have done and patients have done, then I'm walking along the journey with them for them to get better, because it is a process, like Dr. Hamilton said.
Yeah. It sounds like there's some level of self-awareness there if you realize that you are being destructive, right? So that's also very important to have that awareness. And I think it's also really key what you guys are saying is like identifying it and then replacing it with something else. Okay. Brooke, you have any more, or are you good? I know you said you had.
I have other questions from other people that I think this is
Come
on. Okay. So one of the other questions that I got is, how does somebody who's a teenager decide whether or not they're ready to have sex or not?
Oh, love this one.
Good. I'm glad you do. Go ahead.
I was looking like, who's gonna go first on this one?
Okay, go for it, girl.
It all comes back to what Ms. Baptiste said. You got to be self-aware. What's the point? What are you looking for? Why do you want to do it? If you think about it, it's something that we talked about in our last session with our younger group. Good or bad is not the issue. The question is why.
Right.
Are you curious about something? Are you interested in having sex, which usually most people are, for intimacy reasons, experience reasons, peer pressure reasons? Because I think the key thing that you said in this question was, how do you know if you're ready? And so everyone thinking that they are ready is going to vary from individual to individual. But I do think that you need to look at why. If it's for intimacy reasons, there's ways that you can be intimate and not have physical intimacy. There are emotional intimacy that you have. I know that for some young ladies, I have this interesting conversation is helping to understand there's a difference between sex and your sexuality. You can be sensual and not have had sex with anybody. You can understand your femininity and still have that, but you're not sexually active.
Right.
Young men, you can have, you can be present, you can be masculine, you can be the alpha male, as they like to say, but you don't have to have sex with people. It is the presence. But when you're talking about being ready, when am I ready to have sex? You need to ask, why am I doing it?
That's
And
a better
then,
question.
once you know why, you need to process and what can be your outcome.
Exactly.
Because there are certain responsibilities that come with that in this day and age of TikTok, Instagram, and whatnot, they don't tell you about the responsibility. And so it is not anything that you should enter into lightly.
Yeah, and when you reference the responsibility, can you elaborate a little bit on more on that? Are you referring to like potential diseases, babies,
Well,
physical?
it's a lot. It's
Okay.
all of that, as a matter of fact, because when you enter into physical intimacy, physical intimacy is usually an outgrowth of emotional intimacy. And so when you have emotional intimacy, you need to make sure that that is a healthy environment, because sometimes we get into emotional intimacy and it wasn't the best thing for us to do.
Right.
You are not present, you are not able to reflect, you're not really making the choice for yourself, because those types of things also play. It is a mind and body association that you have at the same time. I remember I was supposed to keep it at level 3. That's what I was told to for this session, level 3. So I'm trying to stay in that parameter of level 3.
She might extend it. Can you give her a 5?
No, she told me level 3, so I'm trying to
have an extension.
I'm going to keep it in the level 3 vernacular. That you have to be very careful about who you share yourself with.
Absolutely.
Not everybody should know all of you mentally. Not everyone should know you physically. I try to share with people, you are a prism. Depending on what light it is, depends on what facet you give to people. And that's perfectly okay. But I do think that should you decide to enter into a physical intimate relationship, that you're aware of what is the responsibility of what are your boundaries. What are you agreeing to? What are you not agreeing to? Have you and the partner actually had some conversation about what are our boundaries? I will do this. I'm not doing this. You will do this. What are you comfortable with? What are we going to use? What are we not going to use? Those are conversations that you have, because again, TikTok will tell you all types of things are going on in physical, intimate relationships. They are not. And it's not necessarily, as Dr. Hogan shared with us, they're not healthy. So I think you really do need to sit back and think about, why do I think I'm ready? And why do I feel that I need to do that? I think that's, I stayed in level 3.
Yes, that was very 3-like, 3-ish. Was very, very 3. But just adding on to that, like a lot of times you do it because you want someone to feel a certain way about you. And you reference like, basically what you're losing out on, in terms of if that is not reciprocated, right? Because a lot of times once that happens, the relationship doesn't go any further. It stops. How are you going to feel in that position when you're left vulnerable, when those kind of things, as well as, a lot of times people talk and your reputation and, all those kind of things could be affected, because a lot of times when people are not older, and even that's not a guarantee, but there's not a certain level of maturity behind it. And so, you're doing something for one reason, and you really identify that afterwards you've created a worse situation for yourself.
And those emotions are intense. Once you've decided to be physically intimate with someone, those emotions are intense, and they're very hard to cut. So if you have to really be mindful of what you're deciding to do. And,
Mhm.
you know, if you're deciding to be sexually active and you're deciding to be physically intimate, you know, that's not the same decision as deciding to be pregnant. That's not the same decision as deciding to, you know, not use a condom because you don't want, you know, sexually transmitted diseases, because things are on the rise. And they're on the rise because it's almost like, oh, we'll be okay. You know, you would be very surprised at the people who come into the office who I treat periodically, who you would have no idea because of the way that they like the way they title that they have certain diagnoses. And so you just don't know. And you have to be an advocate for your own reproductive health as well as your contraceptive health. Like you have to be, if you don't want to be pregnant, then you need to have a condom. If you don't want to be pregnant, then you need to be on the birth control pill and have those conversations with those people who are loving you in your home. Like those are things, conversations you need to have and be upfront. And if you aren't able to have those conversations, then you find someone you can have that conversation with, which I hope is a healthcare provider that you feel are trusted.
Actually, I need an extension card.
You have it. Take it.
Okay, so Brooke, there's something that Dr. LeCount pointed out, and I'm going to extend. I'm going to extend not only for, I'm going to use anatomically correct. Oral sex is sex.
Mm-hmm.
Anal sex is sex.
Mm-hmm.
Vaginal sex is sex.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. LeCount has said that you need to use a condom. You need to use a condom for all those sexual encounters.
Mm-hmm.
But what else comes with that is the conversation of you with yourself. And I'm saying you, since you're the one that asked the question and you're the host. What are you comfortable with? Because a lot of times we say, I think I'm comfortable with this type of sex, but I'm not comfortable with those. And you have to make sure that it's consistent with what you're willing to do, because as Mrs. Batista said, you may encounter one type of sex. That's your preference. And then other people will talk about that. Are you okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
And because in the end, you are the person who owns this space. And so you have to be mindful of that. As someone says, you are your own brand. If you're cool with your brand representing that, then you need to make sure that you can take the hills and the valleys, the nuts and the lumps with it. Because again, as Dr. LeCount has pointed out, you can have long-term effects. There are some sexually transmitted infections that you are able to receive that are not protected against simply because you have on a condom. Do you know what those are? Are you willing to live with those long-term consequences for that? And so there are choices. And so I understand in this day and age of peer pressure, not only peer pressure, but Instagram pressure, Snapchat,
social media, music, TV, movies.
See things. Right. I mean, I was really surprised that I actually watched a Disney movie, and I was like, "Oh my, there's this scene in here." Wasn't ready for that, and I'm with my nephews.
Yes,
and I was like, "Well, we're gonna have a conversation after this," but at the time. I assumed because it was a type of image that was coming through, this wouldn't be there. And so those are the things.
I think I know which movie you're talking about. Does it start with an E? Okay.
I will not. But I was very surprised that scene was there.
No, seriously.
So you have to be ready for that.
And also,
be okay with changing. Be okay with changing.
Exactly.
Because you may say yes to one thing at one time. You may say no to it later on. So give yourself that latitude as well. Okay, I think I stayed level 4.
No, that's good. And then after this, we'll move on. But you really have to decide early on who you want to be, right? Like, who am I? Like, who do I want to be in this space in my life at this age, at this time? And so as you grow up and as you get older, things are a lot different. And like you said, you can change your position, but if you go into it trying to make sure that you're trying to please someone else, you're going to get lost. So you have to determine who you are first and foremost, and then try to stay as true to you as possible, because peer pressure will happen. people will change. People will tell you one thing that they themselves aren't even doing, right? So
Correct.
you got to know who you are and stay true to who that is. Okay, Brooke, next question.
The second one they had about that topic was, sorry, let me try to pull it back up.
Okay.
Okay, the other thing they were asking about was soul ties, because like on social media, specifically like TikTok, like people talk about, oh, you should avoid having sex because like usually the first person that you have sex with, you have a soul tie to, and you get like really emotionally connected and stuff and can't function. So what do you think about that?
Absolutely. because see, here's the thing. And actually I should take that back and temper it with depends on where you are with them mentally. Because
if your soul was connected in the first place?
Well, yeah, because if you look at it, if I am mentally connected to someone and my physical connection with them or action grows out of the mental connectedness, which came first? The emotional came before the physical. And so it's very challenging, especially if there was something about that person that you liked before. And so we'll sometimes see it as a natural progression, if you will, to a physical exchange of intimacy. And then when things don't go well, then you're like, but we used to talk so great. Because now you're unsure. Maybe after you talked really great, you both like to go to the movies. This was easy. Or you studied together for chemistry class, whatever it was, and it worked real great. It was really easy. And then after you have a physical intimate experience, and then after that, and they're like, well, I got somebody else to be my chemistry partner. But why? We've been doing this for the past 2 semesters. Why are we changing? So sometimes you have nuances that are introduced in which it could be nothing. They're not being mean to you. They're not trying to make you feel less than. But there's a level of vulnerability, as was said earlier, that you have to negotiate. And so that does happen in relationships. And I think that's what happens when people talk about soul ties with someone, that you are bound to them in respect because you'll always remember what it is that you liked. For some people, they will do anything to get back to that level of comfort. And you may not ever get back to that level of comfort. And so you can leave out of those situations, as you talked about, messed up and depressed and crying about it and this, that, and the other, because we do have legitimate needs. But sometimes we don't go about meeting those needs in the best possible way. And so it is difficult when you place someone in a position to where I am unable to negotiate my own feelings, my own body, my own understanding, my own mind space, because I need them to do that for me or with me. And so, and that's how when folks talk about soul ties, it's how I look at it that way. That's why I will say absolutely, because where you are mentally with that person does affect how you navigate the outcomes that come later.
Okay. Dr. LeCount?
I was thinking about I was just thinking about how it's not all bad. Like, you do want to learn how to be vulnerable with the person that you eventually want to spend the rest of your life with, if that's what you want. You do want to be able to learn how to be in relationships, over periods of time. So you do want to learn those skills, because I think they're important. Sometimes it feels like it's like, well, I don't need to learn those skills. I'm good all by myself. So I think it's important. I think it's important that young women learn those skills and they learn how to be in a healthy relationship.
Yes.
But I also think they need to learn how to deal with rejection. And rejection doesn't mean all the time, or when things don't work out, it doesn't always mean that it's you. Because a lot
Right.
of times we internalize as women that it's me. What
Yes.
can I do? What
Right.
can I change? It may have nothing to do with you. Maybe it's
Right.
just that you've grown away from each
Mm-hmm.
other. Maybe it's that you're not compatible anymore. And
Right.
so I think as women in general, or young people in general, you tend to
Mm-hmm.
internalize that and make it about you, and
Right.
it's not about you. And
Right.
so I think really having someone to help you, or having a really close friend or an adult to be able to kind of walk you through that, somebody who's been there before and say, yeah, I felt that too, but when we step back a little bit, let's look at it this way, giving you
Mm-hmm.
different perspectives, helping you not spiral because that person that you did have an intense relationship with, or an intense um, sexual encounter with, maybe that just wasn't the right thing to do, and it was a mistake, right? Or we made a horrible choice. But
Mm-hmm.
just because we made a bad choice or a misstep doesn't mean that everything else in our life has to spiral from then on. And so
Absolutely.
I was just kind of thinking about when Dr. Hamilton was talking, is that
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's really important for us to give the message to our young women that it's okay to be in relationships. You just want to be
Yeah.
in healthy ones,
Yeah.
and kind of define and talk to people about what that means. What does a healthy relationship mean? And
Right.
as Dr. Hamilton said, it doesn't always have to be physical. You could be intimate, and and not have any physicality, and you could be super close friends
Yep.
and have a really wonderful relationship before that even happens. And so I don't want
Mm-hmm.
to feel like it's like, oh, one way the pendulum is on one side or the other. I think we have to just be realistic, because everybody's surrounded by this stuff. It's in our music, it's on our
Mm-hmm.
TVs, it's on our social media, it's everywhere. So I just think we have to be very realistic with it.
And
Yeah,
Brooke,
and then another thing, oh, I'm sorry, but just another thing with that is like in terms of like even with soul ties or whatever the case may be, when Brooke was growing up, right? When she was younger, there was a time in her life when all she wanted everything to be pink, right? Pink is my favorite color. Pink is my favorite color. I love pink, 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 pink. And then, after a while, she liked purple, right? Then she got into a phase where she liked black or she liked orange or whatever. Like, I think we all kind of go through those phases. And so at different stages in your life, you like different things and you learn what you like and you learn what you don't like, right? And you have the right to change your mind.
yes,
The person who you're dating also has the right to change their minds, right? And so you have to really understand that, like, how we're feeling in this moment is the moment, and that moment could change. And there's nothing wrong with that when you're dating, right? That's what dating is, learning what you like and what you don't like. And I know we were talking about soul ties, but just I wanted to reference dating and preferences and changing that's okay.
it is. And I think it's another thing, just to expand the question that you were given, Brooke, is that this also goes for your platonic relationships as well.
Yes.
Because we
Friendships.
can be in relationships with
Mhm.
a friend, male or
Mhm.
female, and it's not good for us either.
Mhm.
But you start, because I know that the soul ties was taken at one place, but it also comes to a point you have to expand when you're talking about your relationships and you're talking about changes and where you are and how you grow. There may be one of your friends, maybe your best guy friend, and you realize that after a certain point, there are things that they do that you all can't be friends anymore
Mhm.
at this particular time. Or a girlfriend, you can't be a friend with that individual at this particular time either. But you want to leave it in a place where there's a boundary.
Mhm.
And
Healthy boundary.
when
Mhm.
you grow, because it might not be them, it could be you. When
Right.
you grow to that point that you can enter back into relationship with someone and still be that friend and still be present. Because it's important, we are designed to be communal.
Mhm.
Negotiating that is challenging because we're all different. As Ms. Batiste said, sometimes you like purple, sometimes you like red, sometimes you like black. Sometimes you're really close to this friend and you share everything and you're on the phone with them, and then all of a sudden you don't talk to them anymore because you're like, I like this friend again. And there can be emotional changes that go through that. Well, why don't you call me anymore? I thought we were
Right.
girls. We used to always, you have to be able to enter and exit responsibly in those relationships. So being responsible and having healthy relationships is to be well-rounded. It's not just in a particular physical or mental intimacy space. Does that make sense?
Okay, so we've got 5 minutes, so we probably can address one more question if you have one, Brooke.
That was actually the last of the ones I got.
Okay, fantastic. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Brooke, as our co-host. Do you have any closing statements that you would like to leave us with?
Thank you guys for taking time to answer these questions and for having me on you guys' show.
No, thank you for asking us the questions.
All right, Dr. LeCount.
I think I'm just going to end the show in this portion or episode with, I really want my young women to advocate for their health in general. If you don't understand something, then ask someone that you trust, a health provider if you have that relationship, and advocate for your own sexual health, your own contraceptive health. You know, I think these decisions that you make at this journey and then this part of your life are very important, and it's okay to ask questions. Before, I don't think I felt as comfortable asking questions as my kids feel comfortable asking me questions when I was their age, but I'm delighted that they do, because it allows me to have conversations, it allows me to engage. So I'm hoping for everyone that is listening that you find that person that you're able to talk to, so you can get the information you need, so you can form those healthy relationships. You can ask those specific and important questions, and that you learn to advocate for your health at this age, so you can do so as you get older.
Fantastic. All right, Dr. Hamilton.
In this exciting yet trying time of fruit basket upset, the best thing is to pause and ask. Sometimes you got to ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? Or ask someone that you trust, what do you think about this? How do you see it this way? Because perspective is important. It is a time of exploration. So don't be so rigid with yourself. We've talked about the different types of health, your physical, your mental, your emotional health. You're going to change. There are dynamics through this. And what you're trying to put in place as you go along are your healthy boundaries as you move through this time. And these healthy boundaries will help to guide you. They're not always fixed or rigid. They're meant to be healthy, to be expansive, because what you know today is built upon what you're going to learn tomorrow. And so always be compassionate with yourself. Allow yourself to have the freedom to figure it out. Do some things on the fly and say, I don't have all the answers. I'm not supposed to have all the answers. It's not going to be a clean swoop. But in being compassionate with yourself, it allows you to sit down, take a rest, and come back and start today or tomorrow or the next minute with a new viewpoint and some more refreshment, so that you can go on and do this thing called life.
Fantastic. Well, thank you guys for your time tonight. We will be back on Thursday, May 19th at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We will be having the discussion, Advocating for Your Health as a Grown Woman. And we will be joined with another special co-host, Erin Kimball, and we'll go through some questions for them. And then we will also have the Advocating for Your Health on May 20th at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And then at that, we're going to be talking about the invisible woman and Black women and the health advocacy. So again, we thank you so much for your time. We ask that you share. We ask that you like. We ask that you, subscribe to the Healthy Heart Nation page on YouTube for additional content that we'll be doing year long. Every third Friday, we will definitely have each month a heart-to-heart conversation, and we hope that you will join us then. Thank you and have a great night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.